Android versus iPhone 2019. That video's coming up right now. Let's go. So what is up, guys? Nick here, helping you to master your technology. Android versus iPhone 2019. Which is going to be the better pick? Now, I know some technical smarty pants out there is going to say, hey man, that's Android as a software. You should be calling it iOS versus Android. I get that. That is the technical way. But when you're in public and people are saying, hey, you got an Android? Hey, you got an Android? When really you could say, no, I have a Samsung Galaxy. Most people just look at these as Android. So we're talking about Android phones or an iPhone 2019. Let's begin with the first area, which is performance. Now, all of the opinions I'm expressing in this video are my own, and I'm not paid to say any of them. Also, I want to mention that this is all based on heavy use experience throughout the year of using all of these phones here. So the first one, day-to-day lags and stuff like that. You know, with 845s, 855s, Snapdragons, great amount of RAM on the Galaxy S10, Apple A12 Bionic, all these phones perform extremely well. However, I will say that the overall Google Android operating system, I have found to bog down a couple more times. Now, it's very rare here in 2019. It very rarely happens, but I find that the Apple system is still a little bit more consistent and not even having any hiccups ever. So just a little bit more, less likely to run into a hang on the iOS operating system. Now, it does happen on Android, but it's very rare. Like, I mean, almost never. So they're all very good, but I give the slight edge to iPhone here at the start of the third quarter of 2019. So I think going in the end of the year, you might want to choose iPhone if you want long-term consistent performance, although they're still going to be good on these flagship Android phones. iPhone's still leading, I think, in chip performance, and also just iOS across the board just doesn't hang as much for me. But don't take that as these phones are slow, because it's very rare. So the next one is interface and software. Now, for consistency, I think iOS gets the win here. Across the board, it's a full Apple on experience, and everything really does match up very well. It gets even better with iOS 13. However, over here on Android devices, you can see the Samsung, for example, which is probably the most sold Android device out there, the Galaxy line, has Google apps and Samsung apps, so it's not quite as consistent as I would like. You kind of got a Google experience and a Samsung experience going on here. So to me, that interface is not quite as consistent as Apple. Now, the Google Android Pixel device is really a very consistent experience as well. A lot more like what we see over here on the iOS. So Pixel, really definitely the one I would go with if you're looking for that consistency in the interface. However, when it comes to the software itself, it's a tie, because certain days I've really enjoyed using Android for its freedom, customization, certain apps I can't get on iOS, multitasking, and over here for the iPhone, certain days I just really like the clean interface of iOS, and I just like using iMessage and just this ecosystem overall. It's just been really fun to use with my Mac, my iPad, stuff like that. But I don't always want to use iPhone, and a lot of times the iPhone's just sitting in the drawer while I'm using Android for the day. So definitely it's a tie here in terms of software, which one to choose. It really just comes down to your personal preference, but I would give the edge to the iPhone when it comes to the interface elements. I would give the edge to the iPhone when it comes to the interface. It's still a lot more just all Apple over there on the iPhone. Now, when it comes to battery life, I have tested quite a few devices this year, and I gotta say that the iPhone does not lead in this department. Android is gonna get the win in battery life. The Galaxy S10 Plus here has better battery life than that 10s Max by far, and better battery life than the 10R in my experience, which is the leading battery life phone for iPhone. So definitely, I gotta say, when it comes to battery life, if you're willing to go to the high-end Androids or even find some really good mid-rangers, you know, you could get some excellent battery life for the Android device, and that's where the choice of Android phones really comes into play. So now, I still haven't found any Android phone that quite matches the iPhone in standby though. So if you leave your phone in your pocket all day, you're not using it as much, the iPhone's still strong there. Next up is customer support. Now, you know I'm gonna pick Apple, but let me explain why. In the past year, I've had to go to the Apple store one time. It wasn't specifically on the iPhone XS Max because this is a great phone, really has no problems. It was actually on the iPhone 6S earlier this year. I had an issue with the battery, had to get it replaced, and Apple just gave me an entirely new phone. They didn't even mess around, they just gave me a new phone. I was out the door in 1 hour. Now, I also had an experience with Samsung. The screen burned in on my Note 9. Now, this is not the Note 9, but burn-in happened on the phone. It was horrible. I posted on Twitter, went to Samsung, and great customer service in terms of responding quickly and getting my problem rectified. However, the turnaround was 3 to 4 days. I was sent to a third-party authorized Samsung place. And while that's good customer support, I mean, they fixed it free of charge and all that, just the turnaround time was ridiculous. I also had to leave my SIM card with the people who were fixing the phone. So I was a little annoyed by that. So really just much better support for Apple. You can go in the store, get it done. Any problems with Samsung or another manufacturer, it's going to take a little bit longer of a turnaround. So support still for me goes to the Apple device and is a win for buying iPhone here in 2019. Now, I don't want to talk much about this one, but when it comes to user choice, Android's ahead. You have amazing camera phones. You have amazing all-around feature-packed phones like the Samsung Galaxy S10 Plus. You have budget phones. You have OnePlus 7 Pro. You have Sony Xperia 1 that just launched, which we will be reviewing on this channel for videographers and people who just want to use an amazing Sony device. You have Huawei phones. You have amazing Xiaomi phones. There's just so much options and choice, whereas the iPhone does give you plenty of iPhone choice in different sizes. Pretty much all iPhones operate pretty similar, and a lot of them look similar. The XS Max, XS, XR look very similar. iPhones below that all look very similar. So there's a lot more variety on the Android side. You can get a phone in Samsung that looks completely different from a phone from Google, for example. There's just a lot of different looking devices and much more choice. So that goes to Android. Okay, so we're moving on to applications. Now, I'm picking the iPhone for applications this year, and not because of my typical reason, which is the polish. Yes, they are more polished. There are developers that seem to really focus on their Apple apps, and why not? It brings them more revenue. Of course, they would do that. More users over here downloading and buying stuff on the Apple devices. It's statistically proven that people use more money when using an iPhone on their applications. Now, the reason I'm choosing it though is privacy reasons. Now, there's many articles you'll see every week if you really scan through tech feeds and things like that, that there's applications coming out with malware on them on the Android device. Now, that's a scary thing because they can fool you into looking like regular apps and have malware. Now, I think this app has been removed, but there's a Samsung update application that just came out to have basically scammed a bunch of people into thinking that this application was going to help them update their Samsung phone, and they were paying fees. I'll leave a link to the article down below, but that's ridiculous. I mean, stuff like that is just absolutely ridiculous, and I don't think you find that as much here on the iPhone. It's a lot more strict of a process when it comes to getting their apps regulated. So the chances of security issues with applications on Android is higher. So for that reason, I'm choosing the iPhone when it comes to apps. Android or iPhone in 2019 for storage. I'm picking Android every day. Here's why. If you buy a Pixel phone, for example, unlimited storage on the photos for your Pixel device. That's amazing. iCloud's gonna cost you. Samsung device, you can get this S10 with 1 terabyte of storage. That's insanity. That's just so much storage. Plus you can expand the storage on this phone. Apple, on the XS Max, you're gonna pay way more, like 500 more almost for the iPhone XS Max with the 512 gig versus the 64 gig. And that's just not enough for an iPhone device. It runs out pretty quick. So storage going to Android, and OnePlus has the newer fast storage. Now I do gotta say Apple storage is very fast in here, but still just more available storage to Android. Okay, so in terms of the camera quality, I would say it's a tie, with video going to the iPhone and photography going to mostly the Pixel line. But Android gets the photo quality round because you have multiple camera options here, like on the Galaxy S10 Plus. And go ahead, Apple, you're gonna bring your triple camera. I guarantee you the next Samsung will probably have 4 cameras on that baby. So it's always gonna lead in photography on the Android device, I think. And Pixel 4 XL is only gonna get better from here. Now, the sad thing about, I think, the Pixel line is that the camera is so good, but because of the brand perception, the brand loyalty to Apple, I don't care if I told you the Pixel was the best thing to earth, people still won't buy this phone, even if the camera matches a DSLR, like a straight up DSLR. If they put a DSLR sensor, a lot of people still wouldn't buy it just because it's a Pixel device. I mean, it's sad, but you know, that's just how people act. Even though you can post pictures side by side in a blind test, most people will pick the Pixel, but then once you tell them, they'll be like, oh, well, you know, the iPhone still looks pretty great. The iPhone has great video every single time and destroys a lot of other phones out there, and I like it even better than these two in video, but the Pixel destroys it in camera quality in terms of photography. So I love them for different reasons. They are tied when it comes to camera. And the last category is something I think is important to a lot of people, and that's brand perception. I get a comment when I do a lot of these videos a lot that, Nick, you're forgetting to mention that people buy iPhone because of status. They want to look cool and stuff like that. And you know what? I started to think about that, and that is kind of, I think, a relevant point. I actually did a poll on certain people I know, and they said, yes, it does matter. So, and maybe it does matter. You know, the brand perception, and Apple clearly is the favorite here. There's nothing like a phone like the iPhone when it comes to, you know, people recognizing that device. I just feel like people look the other way. I don't care how fancy a Samsung phone is. It just doesn't have that brand perception as the Apple device. And that also affects resale value because psychologically people want that Apple device. And I don't care if it's older or not. I mean, people are still buying the iPhone 6. People are still buying the iPhone 6S. People maybe even still buying the iPhone 5S. Who knows? Maybe the SE, just because it's an Apple device. So you don't have a lot of Android phones from 5 years ago, 4 years ago, 3 years ago, people even care about. So with that being said, this is a win for Apple for me in 2019. Brand perception is going to help you in the long run when it comes to selling that phone again. So if you were keeping a tally, if we break this down, it was basically a 3-2-3, 3 wins to Android, 2 ties, and 3 wins to Apple. We basically have a tie here, but I'm not going to end it there. Now I'm just going to give you my raw, honest take, my opinion, which one I chose to use the most this year. I find myself using the iPhone so much, and I think that the iOS 13 is going to make things even better, but as much as I really liked it, my SIM card was more often in a lot of the Samsung devices as well as the Pixel device for camera days and productivity because I was not able to multitask efficiently on the iPhone. And there's just a few features I could not live without on Android. So I found myself using the Android device more, although I probably would pick iPhone in 2020 when the redesigns do come. But this year, the Android lineups are looking really good. And the Note 10 Pro, the OnePlus 7 Pro that just dropped, and the Pixel 4 XL gonna get rid of the notch. I hit it here in the video because I personally don't like it either. So that's my take on Android versus Apple 2019. If you're purchasing this year, I probably would hold off till 2020 if you can for the iPhones. If you want to go with an Android device this year, it's going to be excellent to see what the Note 10 brings as well as the Pixel 4. We will be covering both of them on the channel, so stay subscribed for that. What is your pick this year in 2019? Drop it down below and explain some of your reasons why. Try to give some details as well. I would really love to hear the real reasons why you're picking either phone. Nick here, helping you to master your technology. Thank you very much for watching. I will catch you all in the next episode. Be sure to be well and peace.